Well, good evening, YouTube viewers. We're back on this 2012 Verano with the network issue. I found connector X121. Look where they put that connector, down underneath the vehicle. There are a total of 5 wires in that connector. And that wake-up wire is that 7th wire. The harness runs over top. These are CAN bus wires. And the serial data wake-up wire to the power steering control module. Now, looking at the harness for rub marks and stuff, and I don't see anything obvious. And I wiggled the connections and such while it was running, and it would randomly stall anyway, so it's hard to tell if the stall is being generated by the wiring harness runs up inside the wheel well. We're going to deoxidize these terminals and put some Stabilitin 22A on them. Oh, brother. So I deoxidized the terminals in X121 and put Stabilitin 22A on the terminals. This is Stabilitin 22A. Liquid gold. And did a network code clear. We got communication with the EBCM. This code's in the BCM for the power window not being calibrated in the license plate light. And I'm running it to see if it'll stall. I wiggled the connections and it doesn't stumble. If it still cuts out, I'm going to bypass the power steering control module by jumpering circuit 2500 to 2500 over here. So connect pin 1 to 3 and 2 to 4 at the harness side to take the power steering module out of the network. It just doesn't make sense that we still have communication with the transmission control module and the ECM when this one goes offline. But then when I unplug this, I lose communication with this, which theoretically I shouldn't, unless it's because the terminating resistor is out of the circuit. Well, let's let it run for a while. So it's been running for about 15 minutes. And it hasn't skipped a beat. I'm monitoring voltage in the EBCM, yaw rate. I wish this thing would die and get it over with and stay dead. It'd be easier to diagnose than this intermittent chasing a ghost. Well, it's 8:24 p.m. So while it's running, I'm looking at other networks, and I realize there is another high-speed communication network to the EBCM. It goes between the EBCM, steering wheel angle sensor, pins 12 and 13 at the DLC, and to the multi-axis acceleration sensor. So there's a terminating resistor, actually two 60 ohm resistors in series, and two 60 ohm resistors in series in the multi-axis acceleration sensor. I never tested that circuit. I don't think it communicates on that circuit between the scan tool and the EBCM, but there's a possibility it does. Maybe if I watch there's communication all the time anyways. I was going to say maybe if I watch the network activity while I pull the EBCM, but it happens so fast I can't tell. The only way would be to disable this network to see if we lose communication with the EBCM. X200 is a big connector under the dash. Oh, brother. What pins is it at? The blue and yellow and white. Pin 6 An 8, 5 and 6. 5 and 6 at the EBCM, so it's on the same row as the CAN bus wires are at the ECM. But then again, when I set up the bench programming tool, I didn't use these 2 wires, and I was able to talk with the EBCM on the bench using pins 9 and 11. I think it was 9 and 11 I used. And I put a terminating resistor across 10 and 12. Well, it is now 8:35 and it's still running. Go figure. Could it have been oxidized terminals at that connector X121? But that still doesn't explain the lack of communication with the power steering control module with the EBCM unplugged. Well, it hasn't skipped a beat, but I went to look in the cab and step on the gas pedal and I see the MIL is illuminated. So let's see what code is set in the ECM. Heated oxygen sensor control circuit. This is the code he mentioned before, P062F00, control module long-term memory performance. Heated oxygen sensor, sensor 2. Heated oxygen sensor, circuit high voltage sensor 2. Heated oxygen sensor, heater performance sensor 1, and heater performance sensor 2. This bothers me, P062F. Well, we could always get a used ECM and put it in there and program it. They don't have to pay for programming now. I got a VIN license. And I'm pretty sure they said they had a used ECM, so it'd be worth a shot. These oxygen sensor codes are probably just the oxygen sensors themselves, unless there's a common circuit for the heater. Just to add a little bit more confusion to the pie here, to the mix. So there's the lab scope hooked between pins on channel 1 on pin 13 and channel 2 on pin 12 and the ground on pin 4, and that's what it looks like. That's high-speed CAN bus 2. That goes between the EBCM, the steering angle sensor, and the multi-axis acceleration sensor. This car's been running for at least a half an hour now and it hasn't skipped a beat. So I'm going to shut it off for the night and try again in the morning. Maybe we'll button some stuff up and take it for a road test. So I was doing some research last night, and if you recall, it set this P062F code for control module long-term memory performance. So I did a keyword search for that, P062F. It's one of the top search items. And I found a TSB. I'll pull up the TSB. It says some dealers may notice a P062F set in the ECM may be either active or history. Sets falsely during low battery condition. This can also trigger certain oxygen sensor codes, 030, 36, 50, 53, 54, 56, 59, 60,
135, 141, 155, and 161. Interestingly, we have 141, 138, 135, 136, or 36. It says, do not diagnose the heater codes. Diagnose the P062F. If it's not exhibiting low battery symptoms, clear DTCs and perform a couple of engine starts. If the DTC sets, battery with a low state of charge due to extended storage time. So bad powers and grounds to the ECM. Now, I did a look at the electrical circuit. I'll pull it up. So here's the ECM wiring diagrams. Power, ground, serial data, and the MIL on the first diagram. And we can see there are two main grounds. One goes to connector 2, pin 73. The other one goes to connector 3, pin 73, and they go to G104. Thanks, GM. Put all your eggs in one basket. G104 is in front of the starter by the dipstick on the front of the engine block. So I'm going to start this thing and run it, raise it up on the hoist, and manipulate that connection and see if the engine stumbles or stalls. So I've already got the engine cover off, and that's G104 right there. Nice and tight. Not compromised. Well, let's measure the voltage drop on the pin 73 at connector 2 and 3 at the ECM. So I'm assuming connector X2 is the middle one because that would make logical sense. So I've removed the connector and taken the back cover off of it so I could back pin the black wire, which is pin 73. And I got the vehicle running. Sorry for the glare. We got 0.1 volts, 0.11, 0.15 volts on it. And I wiggled the harness. So do we have a failing ECM, and why is that affecting the ABS module? Or do we have multiple problems? I got communication with the ABS module, the original one right now. But occasionally when this thing screws up, I'll lose communication with the ABS module and I'll lose communication with the ECM. And then the ECM communication will come back and the ABS module will be missing off the network. Notice it's going up slightly, 0.2. Well, look at that. Point 2, 0.3. That would make sense if that eyelet gets hot. I'm checking the pin connector 2 voltage drop, but I don't know about connector 1. They come from both the same eyelet. Look at that. And the engine's stumbling when it's doing that. Shows a splice in the harness. I'm going to take that eyelet apart and change it. Now it got better again. So the bolt wasn't that tight, and the eyelet is oxidized, as well as the boss on the engine where it bolts on. We're going to clean that up I'm going to peel back this tape and look at this terminal and see if the crimp is compromised in here as well. Maybe we'll put a new eyelet on here. But those two wires, there's a splice somewhere in this harness. Those two wires go to the connector X1, X2 and X3. Yeah, I'm going to change that eyelet and clean this up. So I cut the eyelet off. It wasn't oxidized at the crimp, but I soldered a new ring terminal on there and heat shrunk it and used a Rolox sanding disc to clean the aluminum on the block, wire brushed the bolt and put it back together again. I'm going to shoot it with some spray paint, but we're going to start it and run it and see what the voltage drops is now. Wow. 0.002 volts drop on that circuit now. Am I making a connection here? Yeah. So was that the root cause of the problem? Let's do a network scan now while it's running. So I'll do another smart scan. I know there's going to be codes in computers. We got communication with the EBCM. The multi-axis acceleration sensor module is networked to the EBCM. Okay, let's see what's in the license plate light and lost comm with engine control module. Heated oxygen sensors, passed and failed. Clear fault codes, yes. Read fault codes. No DTCs. Well, I'm going to let it run while I put this car back together again. But that appears to be the issue. We got communication with the EBCM now. Go figure. I didn't find any cases on Identifix of that specific problem being caused by that. I still can't explain why a bad ground to the ECM, because the EBCM doesn't share the same ground as the ECM. The EBCM ground I qualified, that was 0.02 volts drop. And I load tested it. Oh well. Let's put this car back together. Well, there's the car back together again, all the trunk components, body components, panels installed. I had it running most of the time until I had to move the battery, and it didn't skip a beat. No warning lights on. I did a relearn on the door. The license plate light sockets are corroded, so it needs new license plate lights, but he can deal with that. I'm going to take this thing for a road test. Well, it's fixed. I just came back from about a 20-kilometer road test and did a network scan, and the only code we have in any controller is the code in the BCM for the license plate lights. Oh, brother. So, tell me, how would you deal with this customer now? I've got like 16 hours into this thing. I know I made some mistakes. I should have checked the VIN number on the first donor EBCM, and I wasted probably 2 to 3 hours there trying to program that incorrect EBCM. I was pretty sure the EBCM wasn't the root cause of the problem, but when I didn't have communication with it, and I had communication with other modules on the the network after it that led me to believe that it could have been taken down the network. But then I did bypass the EBCM connectors to continue the CAN network without the EBCM, and the car acted up just the same. The intermittency of the problem, and you know, like I said before, if it had died and stayed dead, it would have been fairly easy to diagnose, but it would run for 15, 20 minutes and then quit. And after I cleaned the connection on that X121, which I don't think was a problem, but just cycling that connector, the car ran for quite a while, like a good 45 minutes, and it skipped once, but it didn't actually stall, and that's when it set that internal ROM error code, and that's what led me to looking at the ECM and the grounds and powers. So G104,